I'll be your guide to Gmat at iQuanta. Today we will be having a session in which I'll be showing you how to solve Gmat questions. I have chosen 4 different sections. So to start with, the first section is data sufficiency. Now, we must understand what is data sufficiency. In such questions, there is a question statement and there are 2 statements through which you can answer the question. Now, it depends on which statement, like it can be only one statement is sufficient, there can be both the statements, there can be none of them. So you should mark A if statement 1 alone is sufficient, but statement 2 alone is not sufficient. Similarly, you can mark B, statement 2 is sufficient, but not the statement 1. You can mark C if both the statements together are sufficient, and option D, when each statement alone is sufficient, and option E, when both the statements together also are not sufficient. So here goes the first question. If x is a positive integer, what is the value of x? Statement A says x square is equal to square root of x. Statement B says n upon x is equal to n and n is not equal to 0. So now we have to use our mathematical skills and observation skills to understand or analyze whether these statements are sufficient to answer the questions or not. So let us take the statements one by one. Considering the statement A, which says x square is equal to square root of x. Very basic mathematical operation that squaring both the sides, we get x to the power 4 is equal to x. And we can do this because x is not equal to 0. And why x is not equal to 0? It is given in the question that x is a positive integer. It cannot be 0, it cannot be negative. The next step, we can just move x from the right hand side to the left hand side and it becomes x to the power 4 minus x is equal to 0. Taking x common, this is how we can break the expression, which means the factors are x minus 1 inside the bracket, x square plus x plus 1 inside another bracket, and the product is equal to 0. So when the product of 3 factors is equal to 0, it means at least one of them is 0. Either x will be 0, which is not possible because the question talks only about the positive integers, or x minus 1 equal to 0, which further implies that x is equal to 1, or x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0. Now, so now we are sure that the first possibility is not there. First possibility, that is x equal to 0, is not there. Second possibility is definite. We get the value of x as 1. For the third one, we'll check the discriminant, as the third expression was basically a quadratic expression. The discriminant of this is, discriminant of x square plus x plus 1 is equal to 1 square minus 4 multiplied by 1 multiplied by 1, that is equal to minus 3. When the discriminant is negative, the roots are always imaginary. So of course that cannot be the answer because x has to be a positive integer. Which means that statement A alone is sufficient because by using statement A alone, we are able to find one unique solution to this question. And the unique solution is x is equal to 1. Now, we cannot answer the question till the time we have looked at statement B as well, which we'll be doing in the further slide. Consider the statement B, which says n by x equal to n and n is not equal to 0. Simply, we can just multiply both the sides by x, and this is what we get. N is equal to nx, and as n is not equal to 0, as given in the statement itself, it can be cancelled, which means x is equal to 1. So here we can see that by using statement B alone, we can answer the question. We get one unique value for x. That means statement B alone is also sufficient. So in this case, what we have to mark? We have to mark the option in which it was written, both the statements alone are sufficient. That means option D, each statement alone is sufficient. Hope that gives you an insight into DS questions. We'll be discussing more in the regular classes. Now going on to the next topic, next section, which is sentence correction. So let's have a look at this question. While some academicians believe that business ethics should be integrated into every business course, Others say that students will take ethics seriously only if it would be taught as a separately required course. The statement is not that difficult, but there is some kind of error there, and we have to find the error in the underlying portion of the statement. So the students will take ethics seriously. This is the belief of academicians that business ethics should be a part of every business course, and the students will take that seriously if it would be taught as a separately required course. Now there is some kind of error in this statement. The first error which I can find is separately required course. That is something which is beyond the normal language, because course in itself is a noun, and that has to be qualified by both the adjectives separately and required at once. That is one thing. There are more grammatical rules to it. Look at this. There's one grammatical generalization, and this happens between clauses. So in a statement, there can be two clauses, main clause and subordinate clause. This generalization says an event B will happen. An event B will happen if an event A happens. So will happen is future, and event A happens is present. So whenever we have such kind of statement, we have to follow this generalization. Event B will happen if an event A happens. Now, if we look at these statements, option A, the statement A says only if it would be taught as a separately required course. So of course, here you can see that they have used would. That means they have used future, whereas they should have been using present tense. That is something which we can get from the generalization. So option A is automatically eliminated. Going to option B, only if it is taught. There is present tense here. This can be a possibility. Option B can be an answer. As a separate required course. All right. If it is taught only as a course required separately, so option B and C actually follow this generalization. Event B will happen only if event A happens. In both these options, present tense has been used. Going to option D, if it was taught, it is past. Of course, this cannot be the answer. We should not read further. Option E says if it would, again, future is there. So automatically, we can eliminate options A, D, and E. So options B and C can be correct, but we have to choose only one. For that, we'll be going on to the next set of grammatical rule, which I discussed earlier as well. The course, which course? The course they're talking about, the course of ethics. The course should be equally qualified by the two adjectives. Which two adjectives are those? Required and separate. Because see, the course of ethics has to be integrated. That means it was altogether a separate course. It was not a part of the main pedagogy of the business course. It had to be integrated. It was a separate course, of course, and it was required as well, as academicians are talking about it. So the course should be equally qualified by two adjectives. Two adjectives here are separate and required. So among the options B and C, if we look, option B is using separate and required with a comma, and both these adjectives are qualifying the noun, that is course, equally. And that is why option B is the correct answer and option C can be eliminated. Hope that gives you an insight into sentence correction section of Gmat. Now I will discuss one question from critical reasoning. The question here, in critical reasoning questions, there will be one paragraph, and after that you will have to find the option which can support the argument or it can weaken the argument. In this question, it is about supporting the argument. So let us read the question first. Although many customers do not make a sufficient effort to conserve water, water companies must also be held responsible for wasteful consumption. Their own policies, in fact, encourage excessive water use, and attempts at conservation will succeed only if the water companies change their practices. So one thing is for sure in this paragraph, that the water companies themselves are not doing any effort in saving the water. So, and the question says, which of the following, if true, would most strongly support the view above? All right. So we have to choose that option in which somehow the companies are promoting water wastage or not doing any efforts towards water conservation. Going through option A. Most water companies reduce the cost per unit of water as the amount of water used by a customer increases. Now, what does that mean? So if I am a customer and I increase the consumption of water, I would have to pay less. That means, of course, I might use more water. So from the statement A, it looks like it is supporting the argument because I'll be using more water as I have to pay less. That's logical. Going to option B. There's one thing which we have to be sure of. Like I'm saying, I'm 90% sure about option A, but I cannot mark it unless I have read the other options as well. Let us read that. Option B says most water companies keep detailed records of the quantity of water used by different customers. Now this means even if they keep the record, they're not doing anything. So option B is not actually strengthening, or it's not supporting, it's not weakening, it's doing nothing actually. Option C, most water companies severely curtail the use of water during periods of drought. This is basically weakening the argument because if periods of drought are there, they curtail the use of water. That means they are trying to conserve, but only in the periods of drought, not in general periods. So this is kind of weakening the argument. Of course, it cannot be the correct answer. Option D, federal authorities limit the range of policies that can be enforced by the water companies. Now, this statement is out of scope. This is something which is just random. It is not supporting. It is irrelevant to the paragraph here, so it cannot be the correct answer. Option E says price per unit of water charged by the water companies has risen steadily in the last 10 years. This is basically weakening the argument, right? It's very logical. So we'll go back to our original choice. That was option A, and option A seems to be correct over here. Now we'll discuss the next set of problems which is very critical and a lot of people are scared of it, and that is problem solving. So we'll discuss one mathematics question, a very simple but tricky question. The question says it is a problem of ages in which we'll be using ratios as the concept. I was twice as old as you were when I was as old as you are. Now, this statement kind of looks very humorous, kind of tongue twister. I'm repeating, I was twice as old as you were when I was as old as you are. Okay, what is the ratio of my and your ages? Now, I'll just explain the question to you. I was twice as old. So I'm talking about the past. So in the past, I was twice as old as you were. So basically, if you were, let's say, X years old, I was 2X years old in the past. But today, when I was as old as you are, this you are is basically present tense. That means in the past, I was twice as old. I was twice as old as you were. Basically, what was your age in the past? I was just double of that. But today, whatever your age is, that was my age in the past. All right. So to solve this question, I have made a 2 by 2 matrix. I'll just show that to you. In this 2 by 2 matrix, the columns are representing the ages of A and B, and the rows are representing the past and present ages. In the past, A was twice as old as B. So I've used the simplest natural numbers, that is 1 and 2. So I can assume that the age of B was 1 and age of A was 2 in the past. All right. What happens next? According to the question, whatever the age of A was in the past, that is B's age in the present. So that means I can shift this to, I can copy this to over here as well. Okay, let's do that. Now what? From the past to the present, the growth in age of B is 1 unit. Now, this is where the trick lies. The difference between the ages of two people is always constant because both are growing simultaneously. So if B has grown by 1 unit, A would of course obviously grow by 1 unit. That means the age of A will be 3 in that case. All right. So in the past, the ratio was 2:1. Right now, the ratio is 3:2. So option D is the correct answer over here. I hope I have given you proper insight into the 4 very critical sections of Gmat. We'll be discussing more once we start the regular sessions. Thank you. Stay tuned.